I walked the schools with the young man that shot me in the chest for 2 years. He wasn't mentally ill at that time. He was a shy little boy that played the saxophone quite well. One in 4 families in America is affected by mental illness. Everything from chronic depression to severe schizophrenia. I think we all know people in our own lives, families that are dealing with it. It is a very, very difficult issue because if a person is 18 or over, you have to go through a very difficult court system to get them help if they don't choose to sign up themselves, check themselves in. Obviously, people suffering from a variety of mental illnesses are not going to choose to do that. I know in the case of the Tucson shooter that his parents, though not sophisticated people and not moneyed people, did in their own way reach out. And it's an underfunded system. In Arizona alone, the year of 2011, there were severe cuts in the behavioral health system, especially with the downturn in the economy. There was an upturn in mental illness, domestic violence. Education and mental health go hand in hand. In Australia, the Australian education system takes on mental health in the same way that we, the American education system, has taken on immunization. You can't enroll your child in a school in America without having records of immunizations. I really think we should examine whether we should also have the resources put into and take on mental health so that children are screened throughout their educational process, and we work hand in hand with parents so that when we see problems that they can be treated early. In the case, again, of the Tucson shooter, teachers, a dear friend of mine who was his counselor in high school, they begin to see him spiral out of control. All they can do legally, educators' hands are very, very tied right now. They can express concern to parents. They cannot do anything themselves as far as getting mental health services for that child. And so often, when that happens in later teenage years, self-medication happens with drugs and alcohol, which then gets them tossed out of school and then literally on the streets. So they're now out of everyone's control. I would highly, highly recommend that we look at the stopgaps that we have put in place that keeps educators from working with mental health and law enforcement. One of the biggest battles of dealing with mental health is the stigma. It's something that that has been much talked about, especially in Tucson after the January 8th shooting. And I really applaud many groups that are tackling it, both in the schools and through the churches. There is a program called Mental Health First Aid that's being piloted around the country and being offered in community centers as well as churches and synagogues. And it's a toolkit for the average citizen to be able to recognize signs of mental illness. And again, like regular first aid, it doesn't turn you into a doctor, but it allows you to have some tools and to know the resources. So when you see the neighbor boy displaying certain signs, rather than trying to turn away, you would know where to go. When I stood in the courtroom for the sentencing of Jared Loughner that would put him in a jail cell in an institution for the rest of his life, with numerous life sentences back to back. And we each had the opportunity to address either the judge or to the defendant. And several of the victims did. I was one of the last people to speak, and I turned so that I could address him. And I said to him, Jared, you did not choose this illness that caused us to all be in this courtroom today. And I asked him, knowing that he wasn't going to be able to answer, do you remember when you were at Tortolita Middle School? And I was there too. You were just an ordinary kid that liked to play the saxophone. And it is truly, truly unfortunate that you didn't get the help that you needed then, and that you had the ability to get a weapon that caused so much heartache. And when I went back to sit down at the seats, Gabby reached up with her working left hand and pulled me down and said, thank you. So I can only imagine that in Gabby's limited ability to converse right now, that I maybe said some of the things that were also in her heart. So I'm hoping against hope that this just horrific experience will change the tide. I'm Pamela Simon. Please subscribe to THNKR.